Thank you. I'm happy to be here. The human self is a unique in nature, a remarkably powerful and complicated structure, probably beyond any other psychological structure that we know. In my career and my long efforts to understand the self, early in my career there was a great deal of research on self-esteem, and many of us really hoped that if we could bolster people's self-esteem, that it would make life better for everyone. Well, that failed. Self-esteem was not the answer, but self-control, it turns out, has much more power and much more promise in this regard. Indeed, research is coming out all the time suggesting some of the many benefits of having self-control. People with good self-control do better in work and school, they have better relationships to other people, they're better adjusted, their mental health is better, even their physical health is better, they behave better, less likely to be convicted of crimes or engage in abuse or even have prejudice against others. In the long question of does personality contribute to living longer? Self-control is far and away the most important trait. People with good self-control actually live quite a bit longer than others. And as the last line says, it becomes difficult to think of any major set of personal problems that people have that don't have some degree of self-control failure. Well, what is self-control? I think of it as a matter of changing yourself, of overriding your responses. Usually many people associate self-control with dieting and trying not to eat too much, but it also can be controlling your thinking, controlling your emotional reactions, all sorts of controls of desires and impulses, and also improving your performance at the tasks at your job and so on. The experts like the term self-regulation, and regulate is a useful term because it means to change, but not just to change, but to change based on an idea, a standard. When the government regulates how buildings are made, it doesn't just say do them differently. It says the buildings have to be made in a certain way so that there are enough windows, there are enough toilets, that the doors work, and so forth, so that they have to be made up to a certain level of quality. And in the same way, when you regulate yourself, you change your behavior to bring it up to some idea or goal or standard. The Ridleys and Romer's talks this morning emphasized that much of the value of progress in human culture is based on these systems, these social systems that we create. And they pointed to several key things. One is sharing information. The other is the following rules. Well, self-control is really crucial for that. Indeed, my efforts to understand human nature, more and more I think the human brain evolved not to help us figure out the physical environment, but to work together with other people, that the specific purpose of the human brain is to tap into the systems and the knowledge that the group has. We discover the group together, not alone. We discover the truth, rather, together, not alone, and knowledge is stored in the collective, not in any one person. Well, all this is good, and yes, rules can help produce benefits, but only if people can follow the rules. And so more and more I think the specifically human traits, and acknowledge we are animals too, but we have much in common with many other animals. But what sets us apart, what makes us human, the traits that constitute the essence of being human are largely adaptations made by evolution to help us create and function in this new kind of social life. Well, self-control is very important. Culture, as this new kind of social life, culture is full of rules. Culture only works if people follow the rules to some degree. Countries where rule of law doesn't work, or where there are rules but people don't obey them, well, then those tend to be poor and violent and unhappy places. So self-control as the power to change ourselves so as to live up to rules, that's vital for a human social life. And indeed, in whatever sense, people have free will, and that's another talk. But free will is the foundation of that because it means you don't have to act on whatever your impulse or desire is. You can change and do something else. In terms of the power of willpower, we have a study that will be published early in this year where people wore beepers. Every time the beeper wore off, they're supposed to report, were they having a desire? Were they resisting the desire? Did they do what they acted on? Well, they reported quite a bit of other things. But one of the key findings is posted up there. When people don't try to resist, they act out, not all desires, but they act out about 2/3 of them. In contrast, if they resist, it goes down to 17%. So very effective. People are using self-control all the time to resist their desires every day, many times a day. and quite successfully. Indeed, extrapolating from the data we got from the beepers, look at the middle line, looks like people are resisting desires 3 to 4 hours every day. And so willpower isn't something you just use once in a while. You use it to resist food, or you resist or make yourself laugh at some stupid joke, or you make it resist going to the bathroom, or wait till the end of the meeting to bring up your point. All the things that people use it for happens all day. Now, in our research, a key point is that willpower, the capacity to exert self-control, is limited. The very notion of power implies there's some kind of energy that gets used up, and our research has shown what we call ego depletion effects, that yes, this willpower does get expended. Here's one of the many studies that showed this. We brought people to the lab. We told them, well, you need to taste these things. They had skipped a meal, so they were hungry. We set a pile of chocolates and candies out in front of them, and also a bowl of radishes. And we said, well, sorry, but you're in the radish condition, so you're supposed to eat the radishes, don't touch the chocolates, they're for other people. And so they had to sit there for a while, resist the temptation. We left them alone, so they were very tempted. And we had other people who ate the chocolates, and other people who had no control. But the ones we cared about are the ones who had to sit there seeing those chocolates and smelling those chocolates and wanting those chocolates, and instead had to make themselves eat those stupid radishes. And then what we did next, we took them to a different room, no food, used a procedure we borrowed from stress research, where we had people work on puzzles and said, go on as long as you can. Secretly, we made the puzzles impossible. And saw how long they go until they give up. And as you see, the people in the radish condition gave up much faster. So their willpower had been depleted by the previous task. They didn't have as much to help them keep going on this task. Resisting the temptation took something out of them. And many, many studies, many different procedures have found this same kind of effect. So even a small thing like that uses up some of your willpower. We've seen this in daily life as well. Mainly laboratory studies have shown this, but from the beeper study, you look at the top line, how much you've resisted other temptations and other desires that day. Well, it doesn't make a difference if you're not resisting each current one, but if you are resisting the next one that comes along, your resistance gets weaker and weaker the more you resist various temptations. As you see, the line at the bottom, the red line, goes up, means you're more likely to act on the desire. We find willpower works like a muscle. It gets tired after people use it, but these are conservation. It isn't that you're exhausted, that the willpower is all gone. Rather, like a muscle, when you start to get tired, you start to conserve your energy, but you can still come and pull it together for in a sport and an athlete. If there's an important point, he can exert yourself harder. So it's a long time before people are completely exhausted. Other things can contribute it, but it does catch up to you. Yes, it does get there. We also find that exercise, also like a muscle, will improve your self-control, will improve your willpower, and make you stronger if you exercise regularly. The old Victorian notion of building character does seem to be correct. Now, you don't have to practice willpower on just what you need it for. There's only one willpower. You use the same resource for everything, controlling thoughts, feelings, whatever. It's not that I have good willpower for my work, but bad willpower for controlling my temper and bad willpower for keeping my house clean. No, it's one stock, one resource that you use for all these different things. You may use it all in your work, and your house is a mess and you don't control your temper, but you could allocate it differently if you chose to and if you wanted to. Moreover, it's not just self-control, and this was a surprise to us, and most people don't know this intuitively, but it's the same energy that's also used in making decisions. So, like in the radish study, if people make a lot of choices, then we find that they will give up faster on the challenging task. And it goes the other way around, that after exerting self-control, it will impair their decision-making. Also initiative, to respond actively, to take the initiative, take charge of problems. That takes willpower too, and so when people have exerted self-control or made a lot of decisions, they're more likely to become passive, to take whatever's the default option, take the easy way out. In terms of the symptoms of decision fatigue, so when your willpower is depleted, how does your decision-making change? Other than low self-control, you have more impulsive kinds of decisions. You're more likely to avoid, postpone decisions, say, I don't want to make any choice today. Compromise is something that people do when they have lots of willpower. When the willpower is down, they're less and less likely to compromise. And that includes trading off, say, price for quality, how much, when your willpower is gone, it's either give me the cheapest or give me the best, rather than finding the best value. More likely to go along, as I said, with the default option, whatever, you don't have to choose whatever standard. Irrational biases enter into decision making more and more when willpower is depleted. We've also looked at people who are habitually good at self-control and compared them with others. Now, one obvious prediction is people who have good self-control will resist temptations and resist desires more than others, right? I mean, that's what it's for. But no, we found exactly the opposite. In the Beeper study, people with good self-control spent less time resisting temptations and desires. It's not because they're giving in, but rather they set up their lives to avoid them. Their lives work better in many ways. They have less guilt because they're not yielding to problematic desires. They simply seem not to have those problematic desires. They didn't get into those situations. Although we think of willpower as something that you use to resist temptation, it's really more a matter of creating good habits, of setting up your life to operate in an effective way to prevent problems. Or to put it more graphically, here's Ulysses on the deck of the ship. This is a standard way of how we think about willpower. He's tempted by the sirens. He's trying to fight back. He's using techniques like tying himself to the mast to help. And I don't know why he dresses in women's clothes, but maybe that helps also. But that's our image, the one heroic, using your power to fight off the temptation. But no, the people with good self-control took a different road home and didn't even get into this situation. And that, I think, explains the data I have here. They have less time resisting temptation, but also less giving into problems, temptations, and so less guilt. We also find less stress in life. And so forth. So this is leading to a new understanding of how willpower works. You use it to set up your life in a good and effective way, rather than to prevent problems, rather than to bail yourself out of them. Willpower is connected, of course, to body and brain. In very crude and simple terms, the brain, of course, evolved from the back to the front. The back has the very simple things that tell us to want things that are good, that help us live better in the moment, and they're oriented toward the immediate present. And then over time, as evolution added more and more on the front, and the ability to control yourself, to resist temptation, and so on, came more and more in the front parts of the brain. As we know, too, it was the expansion of social life seems to have driven the increase in brain size. So really we developed the frontal parts of the brain to control ourselves, to resist our impulses, so that, again, we can live better with others, follow the rules that make human society and human culture possible. Our research has also found that glucose is very important. Glucose is a chemical in the bloodstream that carries energy from the food you eat around to your muscles and to your organs and to your brain. The neurotransmitters that enable the brain to function are made out of glucose. In our research, we found that after people exert self-control, they have lower readings of glucose in their bloodstream. So it looks like that's part of willpower is indeed this physiological resource that gets used up. We also find, to go back to some of those studies, if after people have exerted self-control, then they will show the impairment in self-control on the next task. But if we give them a dose of glucose, they perform well again. You have to allow 10 or 15 minutes for that to enter the bloodstream, but then it does seem to restore their performance. We do this often by giving people a soft drink mixed with either a cola light or a real cola with sugar. The sugar provides glucose and improves their self-control. The cola light has no benefit and doesn't produce any effect there. So glucose seems to be part of the story as well. As I said, it's fuel for the brain. Of course, consuming sugar is not the best way to build willpower in the long run. We use it in the laboratory because it works very fast, and we only have laboratory people for a long time. In your own life, you want to use more healthy food that your body can burn and make glucose out of for a longer period of time. Glucose is used not only for self-control, of course it's used for physical exertion, as I said, self-control, decision-making, the other aspects. So yes, glucose contributes to willpower, but it's tied into other things your body does too. It is the basic energy supply of your body. So your immune system is connected to it. Many people find that when they start to get sick, even starting to get a cold, they will get cranky, things will bother them. Well, it's harder to control your emotions when your self-control is low. The immune system uses a lot of glucose, but only now and then, only when it really needs to do it. And that's why they say when you start to get sick, you really should just stop everything and go and sleep. Let your body use all its energy to fight off the cold. I used to make myself work through it because I got to be productive every day, but then I go back and read what I wrote and say, well, this is all stupid, and it was not efficient. I have to redo it anyway. So when your body has a health challenge, save your energy for that, and then at other times it'll be available to use in self-control and discipline for doing your work. Even premenstrual syndrome, we had an article out last year suggesting that at certain times of the month, the female body pulls a lot of glucose away because it needs for its reproductive functions, and so there's less available for self-control. So it's not that certain points in the menstrual cycle implant evil impulses in women, but rather the general capacity to restrain yourself and make yourself live nicely with others is weakened at that point. To conclude, the subtitle of my recent book with John Tierney said that willpower was the greatest human strength, and I think it has fair claim to being that. It's, as I said, foundation for civilization and free will. Morality depends on virtue, and that's essentially changing yourself, changing your behavior to resist selfish impulses to do what's best for the greater good. So we understand self-control, we call it the master virtue because all the other virtues depend on it. Our capacity, people say, ask me in the interviews, well, why don't people have enough willpower? Why don't they have enough self-control? Well, the glass of self-control is really half full and half empty. As I said, nature gave us a lot more than it gave any other animals because probably we evolved to live in these marvelous social systems that produce these wonderful institutions like, well, even what we're doing here today. No other animal or species does anything like this. So yes, the capacity is there, and we have a lot of willpower compared to other species and animals, but we could do with more. We all realize our lives would be better if we had twice as much as we had. The effective thing in terms of managing your life is to understand how this resource works, understand that this is powerful, but it is limited, understand too how it is tied in not only to fighting illness and physical exertion and all the other things your body does, but especially making choices and taking active initiative to change the world and solve your problems and even just deal with minor issues. Given all that, I think it's fair to suggest that indeed willpower is the greatest human strength. So I'd like to thank the many collaborators I've worked with over the years, and our book, unfortunately available now only in English, but next month there will be a German language version. Thank you.